"You're a disgrace to this family, Christopher. Leave. You're not wanted here." Those stinging words from my father echoed in my ears. It was my brother Alex's wedding, and the entire room fell silent as my father humiliated me in front of the guests. Alex stood nearby, not even attempting to stand up for me. Anger surged through me, and I was on the verge of walking out. But just then, a wedding staff member rushed toward me, her face pale with concern. "Please help us," she pleaded. "We're in trouble and need your assistance." In that moment of crisis, everything shifted. Little did I know that this request would not only alter the course of that evening, but would also force my father to face the truth about who I had become, a truth he had long refused to see. Growing up, I was one of two brothers. Alex, my older brother, was the golden child. My father, a highly respected lawyer, placed all his hopes on Alex. Our childhood wasn't filled with the carefree days most kids enjoy. Instead, our lives were regimented, filled with lessons, tutoring sessions, and constant studying. While Alex seemed to thrive under my father's expectations, I struggled to meet the impossibly high standards set for me. I admired Alex. He was everything I wanted to be. But no matter how hard I tried, I always felt like I was a step behind, falling short of Dad's approval. The turning point came when I failed the entrance exam for the private school Dad wanted me to attend. From that day on, Dad barely spoke to me, focusing all his attention on Alex. It was the beginning of a long, painful silence between us. After my failure, I attended a public high school, while Alex continued on the path Dad had meticulously laid out for him. The 3 years I spent in high school were some of the most challenging years of my life. Not because of the academics, but because of the growing emotional distance between me and my family. My father's disappointment was obvious, and Alex's indifference cut even deeper. My once close bond with my brother faded, leaving me feeling isolated. The only person who treated me the same was my mother. She never stopped supporting me no matter what. Yet, I knew I needed to find my own way. So, after graduation, I made a bold decision. I packed my things and left home without saying goodbye to my father or Alex. I only left a note for my mother, thanking her for always being there. I knew it was the right thing to do, even though it felt like I was leaving everything behind. I found a job at a hotel where I could also live, which was exactly what I needed to start fresh. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me a sense of independence I had never known. The hotel manager, Michael, was tough but fair. He wasn't like my father, who only ever pointed out my failures. Michael pushed me to improve, but he also acknowledged my hard work when I did something right. His praise motivated me in a way I hadn't experienced before. Life at the hotel was busy, especially during the new year, which was the hotel's peak season. That first year, I worked harder than I ever had before. Then, the hotel faced a crisis. A broken pipe in the kitchen on New Year's Day. We were short-staffed, and the chaos was overwhelming. Desperate to help, I offered to fix the pipe myself. My background in science and engineering from high school suddenly became useful. To everyone's surprise, I managed to fix the issue, earning praise from Michael. It was a moment of personal triumph, one that gave me the confidence I had been lacking for years. 15 years passed, and I had risen through the ranks, eventually becoming the general manager of the hotel chain. I had built a life I was proud of, far from the oppressive expectations of my childhood. My work gave me purpose and fulfillment, but I hadn't kept in touch with my father or Alex. I spoke with my mother occasionally, and it was through her that I learned Alex was getting married. She urged me to attend the wedding, though I wasn't keen on the idea. After much convincing, I reluctantly agreed. The wedding was being held at a luxury hotel, one that I happened to oversee in my role as general manager. On the day of the wedding, I arrived wearing an old suit, feeling out of place among the high society guests. When I saw Alex and Dad for the first time in years, it was clear that nothing had changed. Dad's first words to me were cold, dismissing my presence at the wedding as unnecessary. My anger resurfaced, but before I could leave, the staff approached me, asking for help with a last-minute crisis involving the seating arrangements and food. As the general manager of the hotel chain, I was more than equipped to handle the situation, even if my father didn't realize it. I immediately took charge, directing the staff to resolve the seating issue and personally overseeing the preparation of an extra meal for the unexpected guest. It felt surreal. Zrenia, returning to the very room where I had been humiliated just moments earlier, now as the person everyone relied on to save the day. As I worked to resolve the crisis, I couldn't help but notice the look of disbelief on my father's face. He had no idea who I had become or what I had achieved. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of power, not over others, but over my own destiny. I wasn't the failure he thought I was. The wedding proceeded smoothly, and by the end of the night, I had not only saved the event, but had also garnered praise from the bride's family and the hotel staff. After the ceremony, there was a moment of quiet when I was left alone with my father and Alex. My mother stood off to the side watching, knowing that this confrontation was long overdue. Alex was the first to speak, surprising me with an apology. "Christopher, I'm sorry for everything. Thank you for helping today and for everything else," he said, his voice thick with emotion. It was a moment I had never expected. For years, I had felt nothing but resentment toward Alex for abandoning me when I needed him most. But in that moment, I saw that he had been struggling too, burdened by the weight of our father's expectations. As for my father, he stood there, silent, his face betraying a mix of pride and regret. He didn't apologize. He wasn't the kind of man who could, but his silence spoke volumes. I didn't need his words. The truth was, I had moved beyond needing his approval. 3 days after the wedding, I was enjoying a rare day off when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. To my surprise, it was Alex. "I got your address from Mom," he said, looking a little nervous. "Can we talk?" I invited him in, still unsure of what he wanted to say. As we sat down with cups of coffee, he opened up in a way he never had before. "I've always envied you, Christopher," he admitted. "You left. You built your own life. I stayed and did what Dad wanted, but I never felt free." His words took me by surprise. I had always seen Alex as the golden child, the one who had it all. But hearing him speak, I realized that he had been trapped in his own way, just as I had been. He had lived his life trying to meet our father's impossible expectations, and now he was beginning to question it all. Alex went on to explain that he was considering leaving his job as a lawyer, the career path our father had chosen for him. He wanted to pursue his passion for glass crafting, something he had taken up as a hobby but had never had the courage to pursue full-time. As I listened, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of empathy for my brother. We had both suffered under the weight of our father's expectations, but we had taken different paths. While I had broken away and forged my own life, Alex had stayed, trying to live up to an impossible standard. "Do what makes you happy, Alex," I told him. "Don't worry about what Dad thinks. You deserve to live your own life." Alex smiled, a genuine smile that I hadn't seen in years. "Thanks, Christopher," he said quietly. "I think I needed to hear that." A month later, I received a letter from Alex. In it, he explained that he had left his job as a lawyer and had started training as a glass craftsman. His wife was supportive, and although our father had disowned him for abandoning the career he had chosen for him, Alex was happier than he had ever been. Reading his letter, I felt a surge of pride for my brother. He had finally found the courage to live his own life, free from the expectations that had once weighed him down. As for our father, he remained as rigid as ever, unwilling to accept that his sons had chosen different paths. But that no longer mattered. For the first time, Alex and I were free to live our lives on our own terms. In the months that followed, Alex and I grew closer than we had ever been. We spoke regularly, exchanging stories about our lives and our work. Our relationship, once strained by years of silence and resentment, had transformed into something stronger. We had both found our own way, and in doing so, we had rediscovered the bond we had shared as brothers. As for our father, he remained distant, still unable to reconcile the fact that neither of his sons had followed the path he had laid out for them. But we no longer needed his approval. We had learned to find our own way, and that was enough. Life continued, and I remained focused on my work, thriving in the career I had built for myself. But there was a sense of peace that I hadn't felt before. I no longer carried the weight of my father's disapproval, or the burden of trying to live up to someone else's expectations. I had found my own path, and in doing so, I had not only regained my sense of self, but had also rebuilt my relationship with Alex. The years of pain and silence were behind us, replaced by a newfound understanding and respect for each other. We had both endured our own struggles, but we had come out stronger on the other side. As I sat in my office one evening, reflecting on everything that had happened, I received a phone call from Alex. "Hey, Christopher," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "I just finished my first commissioned piece. It's going to be displayed at a gallery next month. I'd love for you to come to the opening." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride for my brother. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied. As I hung up the phone, I realized just how far we had come. We had both found our own way, and in doing so, we